Hi, Satnam, it's me, Shakti Sundari, and I'm feeling really quite nervous about making this video tonight, but also really called to make it. This is something that has been bubbling up through me the whole of today as something I have to say. This video is about how the mind that sees pornography is the same as the mind that creates pornography. I am following on from a series of videos that I've been feeling really inspired to make following the fact that Facebook deactivated my advertising account because they deemed my landing page to be pornographic. My work is actually as a sacred sexual priestess and a teacher of embodied awareness and female feminine empowerment. It's nothing to do with pornography. But I really want to thank Facebook for doing that, because actually their action has really tapped into or activated a deeper sense of power within me, and a deeper, stronger passion, if that's possible, to really share my message with the world, and to do so even more fearlessly. It is such a strong vibration within me right now to speak out and to share my truth with no fear. And so I really thank Facebook for prompting that to happen. And like I say, what I'm going to say now, it's been sitting with me like something that's just saying, you have to say this, you have to say this, you have to say this. So I'm just going to say it. I'm going to launch out into the flow of this, whatever's going to come out of me. I have made a few notes, so I've got a few sticky notes around me, but whether I look at them is a different matter. Normally, as soon as I start talking, and energy starts flowing and words just come out. But this feels really important, and this is why I feel so nervous. I'm scared, actually, to say some of the things I'm going to say, but I'm going to start, and let's see what happens and where this goes. Okay, so Facebook deactivated my advertising account because my landing page was deemed to be pornographic. Now, I believe, although I'm not actually sure, because it's very hard to get the information from Facebook, that this is because the link went to a blog that I'd written, which was called Does Position Really Matter? And at the top of that blog was a picture which had four artistic representations of couples having sexual intercourse. It was what I would call a piece of art, a work of art. So it was done with taste and color, and it looked like an ancient picture that might have been from the Kama Sutra or something like that. Anyway, I guess that isn't necessarily the point, but it is a bit of the point. So there was that image. And also on my website, I talk a lot about, or I use the word sex a lot, and I use the word sexual energy a lot. And I've explained before, that is because we cannot stand in our truth and our power without being connected to our sexuality. And sexual energy that I work with in teaching yoga and dance and Tantra is an energy of awakening. It's also the same as Shakti, life force energy, which is the divine feminine, the all-powerful, almighty creatrix energy that creates and manifests all of life. So I use those terms a lot. So maybe that's why my account got flagged. But the point is this. My account got flagged for perhaps that image, we don't know, and probably for some of those words. But then sort of there was an attempt to close it down or to deactivate, or it has been deactivated. And why is that? Why is that? I would say that is because sexuality, sex, the body have been demonized. And that there is a mindset there that sees sex, the body, and sexuality as bad, as wrong, as dirty, as shameful, as something that we want to distance ourselves from and disown and pretend that we don't have as much as possible. And therefore, in my understanding, that mindset is the very same mindset that is creating and consuming pornography. I'll tell you why. What happens when people watch pornography? They typically do it in private. They typically don't tell anyone about it. Often it's something they feel a little bit ashamed about. It's certainly not something we have a conversation about around the dinner table. Oh, what did you just do? Oh, I was watching this really good porn movie. We don't talk about that with our friends of the office, do we? Oh, I saw this really good porn movie last night. Okay, so it's something that is we're pretending isn't happening. So there's a sense of dissociation or a pretending that something is not there that very manifestly is there. And at the same time, there's this very, very huge double standard in that we are surrounded by and being bombarded by sexualized images of objectified men's and women's bodies and body parts all the time. Look at the popularity of 50 Shades of Grey, Naked Attraction, read Cosmopolitan magazine. I mean, sex and sexualized images are everywhere. Everywhere. Our culture is saturated by women with wet lips with phallic-looking objects near their mouths. I mean, right? So there is a split between sex and power, or there's a use of sex and power and money. There's kind of this nexus. So it seems to me that when sex is used to objectify and to sell, it is approved of. I mean, who's making a lot of money out of pornography? A lot of people. I'm not making much money out of talking about conscious sexuality. If I wanted to make money, I'd be making porn, but unfortunately, that's not what I want to do. But the porn industry is huge. It's massive. It's millions and millions of dollars. So let's look at how sex is used to objectify, then it's okay. When sex is used to subjectify, which is what I'm doing, which is to empower others to be subjects, fully empowered individuals, sovereign beings who own their sexuality, somehow that is wrong. Somehow that is something to be afraid of. I'm really curious about that. So this is why I see that the mentality is exactly the same. Now, where does that mentality that wants to demonize sex, put it into the shadows, come from? Or where does that stem from? I'll put my glasses on because I just want to look at my notes. And also, that splitting off from sexuality, I'm going to go into this a little bit more, but just think about what happens when we push something underground. We get rampant sexual abuse in the church, okay? In the church, rampant sexual abuse. I mean, sorry, I shouldn't be laughing, but it's just so obvious. It makes me furious, actually. We get rape, we get sexual abuse of women, we get sexual commentary all the time towards women. So yeah, let me take this back around because I'm rambling a little bit now. But for me, this split that is in the consciousness of all of us, so it's within me too, although I've been working on my last 15 years to integrate this, because Tantra is about the integration, the union of opposites rather than the creation of opposites. So this objectification and demonization of sex, the body, sexuality, just so that the word, when we hear the word sex, people kind of go, ooh, although secretly they're turned on by it, right? There's a split. This is the split between masculine and feminine, between masculine and feminine principles and energies, between the body and the mind, between consciousness and energy. It's the split between sexuality and spirituality. And my work is all about closing that gap and bringing sex and spirit together and bringing masculine and feminine together. So what happens when we have that split? what happens when we have that split is that we other, we project. So here's what I'm going on to the bit about how the unevolved masculine projects his fear and his shame. So I was really thinking about this. I was thinking about how sex and sexuality has become demonized, and how the feminine, because she is the holder of sexuality, she is the holder of manifest embodiment, has been demonized. Why women are made to cover up in certain cultures, you know, it is because the masculine is not owning his sexual energy and he's not owning his sexuality. There is a shame around his own sexual power, and that shame and that fear is then projected onto the feminine, and she becomes the object who carries his shame and his fear of the power of sexual energy. That is what I see is happening. Okay, it's just I know that this is what I've been scared to say. It's a very strong statement. The more you are cut off from your sexuality, the more you will objectify, the more you will brutalize and be able to the other. This is why it is possible for rape, abuse, and war to exist, because men and women are cut off or split off within themselves. And in terms of the unevolved masculine, he is cut off from his feminine. He is cut off from his feeling nature. He is cut off from the purity of his sexuality. He is cut off from his ability to relate, and he is cut off from the love in his heart, which she represents. And so all of that gets projected onto her and gets demonized and gets swept under the carpet. And this is where we get all this distortion that leads to all the terrible things like abuse and war and conflict. If a man were truly connected with his feminine, with his sexuality, with the purity of his sexuality, war and abuse would just not be possible. Okay, that's kind of a big part of it. I'm sorry that I can't read your comments. When I start talking, I go into a bit of an altered state and I get into my flow and I can't really see. I just talk. I will look at your comments afterwards or in a minute. Now, another thing about this, there's the shame and the fear that I identify that is being projected onto women and projected onto sex. So that it is seen still as something that is dirty and to be ashamed of. So little children are told to cover their bodies up. I mean, for fuck's sake, we are born beautiful and perfect in our nakedness. We die perfect and beautiful in our nakedness. There is no shame in this body. This body is beautiful, holy, and hallowed. So please do not project your shame and your fear onto your children's bodies. They are innocent, and our sexuality is the most innocent, powerful, beauty, loving thing that exists in the world. So if you are doing anything to make somebody feel shame around that, that is your shame. You are projecting it onto them. Yes, I know there are centuries of conditioning around this, centuries. But again, the tide is changing. The tide really is changing. We work in Tantra and yoga with chakras, with energy centers, and they represent different levels of consciousness. So just think about a body and think about the base chakra. So that is the very foundational part of the body. And from that part, we connect to our sense of survival and security. The second center, which is so these two centers, the lower two centers, connect to your sexuality and your survival. So that's where your cock is. That's where your vagina is, right? Okay. And then we move up to your power center in the middle of the body. Then we move up to the heart, your capacity to love. Then we move up to your throat, the capacity to communicate, your third eye and your crown. So these are all different levels of consciousness. Now, what is going on in the world are two things. One, a lot of people are going around cut off from the waist down, so they're not connected to their sexuality, their fundament, their roots, their power in an organic way, or certain parts are activated and other parts are not. There may be very open hearts, but a complete disconnect from sex. There may be very great connections to spirit through meditation and prayer, but a complete cutoff from sexuality. The point is, all of these have to be aligned and integrated. Otherwise, all kinds of things get distorted in the expression of sex and sexuality and relating. If you look at the countries around the world where there is a proliferation of conflict, or where, look at how women, basically just look around the world and see where there's the most conflict and how women are treated, and you'll have a sense of which chakras are open or closed or focused upon, and how evolved the levels of consciousness are. Coming back to the root and the sexual center, you know, there's the feminine and the masculine, and they are, if you look at a body of a man and a woman, they're different. So the phallus is designed to be erect, it's designed to be vertical, it's designed to be in alignment with higher consciousness and truth. However, if that verticality, which is very penetrative, right? So in real life, penetration happens from the phallus, right? It's a physical act, it's a physical going out, it's a physical going into. If you take that action and that energy to its extreme, you could say that's the killer instinct. And I believe, again, that there is a fear of that is now amongst our men, and or a distortion and misuse of that. So two things. If that energy is taken to its extreme, it will obliterate, it will kill, it will crush, it will penetrate to the end and through to the other side, right? And what's happening is there's a lot of masculine sexuality which has that impulse, but it's not connected to the other energy centers. So that impulse is there to penetrate, but it's not connected to an integrated self-grounded sense of power. It's not aligned with true power. It's not aligned with the heart and the compassion and the love of the heart, and it's not aligned with a higher consciousness, a more awakened way of perceiving and looking at the world. So masculine energy and masculine sexual energy is acting from its lowest impulse, and that is kill, destroy, penetrate, objectify, right? This is strong, isn't it? I don't know if I'm going too far, but I'm just feeling really called to say that. So in isolation from the feminine, which is about love, which is about feeling, which is about sensation, it's easier to do this pushing away, killing, brutalizing, objectifying, destroying, not just people, not just children, but the planet. And this is why what I teach is about bringing together man and woman, sex and spirit, all levels of the body, all levels of the spirit, integrated. Man needs woman, woman needs man. We need each other. We can't operate in isolation. When we do, it gets very dangerous. There is the possibility for the cycling of energy within the man and within the woman to integrate all of those things, but also between. So heart opening love making shifts that whole dynamic when sex and love are connected and circulate between man and woman, or when sexual energy flows all the way through the body to the highest center and back and around between man and woman, or between two partners. Then it's flowing. Then there's an opportunity for integration, but not when it's isolated and cut off. There is, in my perception, a large, powerful group of organizations or governments or I don't know, I can't think of the right word now, but a large group in this world that has a vested interest in us not knowing this, and in us not understanding this, in us not experiencing this. There is the fear that in connecting to our sexuality, we will become empowered and awakened and open our hearts. The thing is, it's actually unavoidable because there's such a strong groundswell now of the awakening feminine around the world. It's going to happen, and it is happening. I'm part of that, and so many of you are part of that. But there is a vested interest in keeping the sexual energy down at its lowest level of evolution and keeping our awareness down at its lowest level of evolution. Pornography, in my opinion, a lot of it, not all of it, is a part of that strategy to keep us there. So once again, we can get lost in watching a load of images that objectify people and portray unrealistic sex and waste time and not be able to relate to our partners and lose our real sexual drive. You know, who does that benefit? Somebody's making a lot of money and somebody's cutting us off from our heart and from our partners and from our highest potential. So it's all connected. Okay, and my work and the work of so many other people around the world is about a complete shift in awareness and consciousness that just skyrockets what's available to us all. And it has to take the whole body with it. It has to take sexuality with it. We cannot awaken and evolve without the integration of all of this. So that is why I'm going to keep talking about sex and sexuality and the body and love and divine union and truth. Okay, that is my message for tonight, and I'm a bit scared to go and look at the comments, but I will. And you know, I've got so many other important things to be doing, but I had to make this tonight, and I really hope that it's been received somewhere. So thank you for watching. Thank you for all the comments that you've made, and Sat Nam.